everyone! Welcome to My Opinions Are Trash. Today I will be ranking the characters from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I will say, this is the hardest tier I've ever made because there's so many good characters here. But one thing I will say is that the absolute worst is the Fire Lord himself. He goes at the very bottom. He traumatized so many people, especially his own children. He was outright physically and emotionally abusive to Zuko, and he put so much pressure on both him and Azula that it caused both of them to have complete breakdowns. I can confidently say that Azula would not have turned out to be who she was if he was not like that towards the two of them. He also caused so many issues just all around. There's no liking this guy. 29. My god, can this guy be any more irritating? His ego's just too much for me. Plus, he's technically responsible for what ended up happening to Yue, so we can put him down here too. Okay, so I had a hard time figuring out who was worse, him or Zhao. Both have the same ego, both are irritating in their own way. I honestly enjoyed watching him get taken down by Azula. The only reason I decided to put him above him was because he was more of an inconvenience than anything, and he didn't do the same amount of damage. The backstory of him and Roku was one of my favorite episodes, so that's why I don't hate him as much as the last three. However, we do have him to thank for how all this mess started to begin with, so he belongs down here with the rest of them. Alright, so in D tier we have Jet. Jet isn't as bad as those I listed before, but I really did not like this guy. More than anything, he got on my nerves, and I didn't really see a reason for him to return. He mostly irritated me with his obsession in taking down Iroh and Zuko. Really, I don't know why anyone would want to mess with Iroh, but here we are. I was just ready for him to go away. 25. Jet's honestly the only one I'd put in D, so at the start of C is where I'd put all the characters who only came around in filler episodes and didn't really have any purpose. Next we have Combustion Man. This one's pretty self-explanatory. He's a big guy just out to kill people. Nothing to him. Y'all remember her? I thought she was creepy at first, but it's honestly kind of funny and sad when you think about it. Poor Judy. Oh, Earth King. This poor guy. I don't really have much to say about him. Next we have Old Man Misogynist. He did get his redemption, so I will give him that. He could be a lot worse. And of course, last in our C tier we have him. This poor man just wants to sell his cabbage. Is that too much to ask for? Starting off B tier. He's honestly pretty cool. We only get to see him a couple episodes, but we know he was a badass. He was a little impatient with Aang, but Aang was also being kind of a shit. I liked him as a character, and getting to see his background with the Fire Nation was cool. The Moon. Poor Yue. She was a decent enough character. Like Zhang, we really only got her for a few episodes, but they were still memorable. I definitely respect her as a character after her sacrifice. Plus, we got some good memes out of it. Poor Sokka. Next we have Sokka and Katara's dad. I really thought he was an interesting character. His dynamic with his two kids was fun to watch, and he was arguably the best biological parent on the show. Emphasis on biological. Also, he helped out Team Avatar quite a bit. I have to hand it to Suki for ending Sokka's sexism in the beginning, which made him into a much more likable character. I don't really have anything bad to say about her really, but there's plenty of others who I like more. Again, this is another character who only appeared in a couple episodes, but god, she was so cool. I liked everything from her attitude to her character design. I liked that she came back, and it was something I was not expecting. Next is Avatar Kyoshi. She's pretty cool. We don't see her like we do Roku, which is disappointing because I feel like she has a lot of potential. There's a whole tribe dedicated to her, so we know she was a badass. I just wish we saw her more. What a cutie. That's all I have to say. Moving on to A tier, we have Mei. Mei is one of the most interesting, more developed characters. We see she's bored with her current life, and she decides to go join her childhood friend Azula. Then we see that they go back far enough and she's always had a thing for Zuko. She normally doesn't show emotion, but we later learn why. Seeing her at the end also made me like her even more when she was willing to sacrifice everything to defend him. I really do enjoy May as a character. Next we have Katara. She's my least favorite member of Team Avatar, but she's still a good character. I think the moments where I truly loved her were during any of the blood bending. I thought it definitely added more to her character, and we got to see a side to her that we hadn't seen previously. Otherwise, she does have moments where she gets on my nerves, but I do still like her. You gotta love Boomy. He's just your goofy old man who, surprisingly, is also a badass. The show seems to have a lot of those. I love Aang. He's the Avatar himself, how can you not? He's one of the most developed characters here. We see him go through a lot of change from him being childish and sometimes lazy and ignoring his responsibilities to becoming what he became later on. His development was pretty well done, and it was interesting to see how despite everything he has to deal with, he's still a kid. Roku is my favorite Avatar. His episode was one of my favorites because we got to actually see more about him and who he was. Seeing everything that happened with him and Sozin was heartbreaking. He also was always quick to help Aang whenever he needed guidance, and I would watch a series about Roku himself. Look at this cutie. I love Appa so much. Aang even said it himself, Appa pulls a lot of everyone's weight, and we all know the show wouldn't be what it is without him. Ty Lee will always be one of my favorites. She's adorable, and she's a good foil to both May and Azula, not to mention how much of a badass she actually is. Also, I love how quickly she was to help May. Even though she's not exactly on the best side, we know she has good intentions, and she genuinely loves everyone she cares about. Starting with S tier, we have Sokka. I never thought he'd end up in my top 5 from his first few episodes. He was misogynistic and irritating at first, but he definitely grew on me. He's one of the funniest characters for sure, and even though he's not really a bender, we still get to see him be useful to everyone. And we also got to see how he struggled feeling useless, despite all of us knowing it's not true. Sokka also had some nice development in the series, and he somehow grew to be one of my favorites. He always makes me laugh. Next we have Zuko. He is also one who I didn't think would end up this high, especially after he betrayed Uncle Iroh. However, we saw him get a really good redemption. He definitely went through the most character development out of them, and we see him go from angry and obsessed with hunting the Avatar, to being depressed and confused, to pissing me off completely, and then going back to being a decent guy. I felt so sorry for him after seeing how he's treated by his family, and we see him slowly learn to take in everything his uncle taught him, and the guilt he has for how he treated him. It added to his redemption. Plus, we see a different side of him with his relationship to May. He really turned out to be a great ally when he joined Team Avatar, and he was one of the most well-rounded characters. For my top 3, we have Toph. She's someone who I consistently loved from the moment she first came on screen. Not only is she adorable, but she's also a badass. She's one of the funniest characters and my favorite from Team Avatar. She doesn't take anyone's shit, and she deserves this place at the top. Alright, probably my most controversial opinion, but hear me out. I am well aware of how terrible she is. However, I also think she's one of the most interesting, well-written characters. We all know she's a badass, and always was. She could have easily taken everyone down had it not been for her complete breakdown in the end. Her entering the series was what got me into the show. It's honestly one of the many reasons why I prefer the 2 later seasons. She is calculating, manipulative, and power-hungry. These are the qualities that make her despicable, and that's kind of how she became responsible for what ended up happening to her. I couldn't help but root for her sometimes, not to mention she's also kind of hilarious. Despite being a villain, she has her own share of comedic moments. Also, we get to see more of her as a person when we see the beach episode. It was adorable seeing that she actually is socially awkward at the end of the day. I felt so sorry for her at the party when she didn't know how to interact with anyone, And it shows that sometimes she really does just want to be a normal person. But she also doesn't know how to, and in this episode we can see how she was hurt by her mother's actions. Azula and Zuko had terrible parents. We know what their father did to Zuko, but he also made Azula the way she was. He had her completely brainwashed from a young age, but he didn't really love her. He just saw her as being useful to him, and he didn't really show her any affection. Also, because she was completely brainwashed, her mother didn't really love her either. This is something we know that completely haunts her, as she mentions in the beach episode. But we also see this when she has a complete breakdown. Even though I'm aware of who she is, I feel terrible for her. We also know she cares about her friends to an extent. Their betrayal was what ultimately led to her breakdown, and if she cared about anyone, it would have been them. They were the ones she trusted, and we could see how much it hurt her whenever they betrayed her at the end. This is what caused her to lose it, and I think it's because she didn't believe she could trust anyone. Her breakdown was one of the saddest moments, and I think it's because she had a lot of potential to have redemption like Zuko, but she didn't. This is true to life, though. Not everyone who is horrible gets a redemption. Sometimes they have complete nervous breakdowns, which is what happened to her. I don't know, but I really feel for this character. And for my number one, of course, we have Uncle Iroh. Seriously, though, I don't think anyone is allowed to have a different favorite character. This man is such a positive light in what can be such a dark world. He's always doing everything he can to help others. He's always trying his best to be as positive as he can. He has so much wisdom and love to give. The way he treats Zuko, even after all the horrible things he does, is so sweet. I love Uncle Iroh so much, and in what I otherwise thought was going to be a filler episode, it turned out to be one of the most important moments to me. It was the moment when we see him going through and helping all those different people, only to see that he's gathering stuff for his son who passed away. Whenever he says he wished he could have helped him, oh my god. What a beautiful soul. He's one of those people who you wish was real and you could ask for advice whenever you want it. No one is allowed to dislike this man. Well, I'm sure I pissed enough people off. I apologize for the long wait. Let me know your opinions in the comments, and I fully expect to get ripped apart. Thanks for watching.